making some gluten-free cinnamon rolls today. And you want to start with a round pan and melt a tablespoon of butter or ghee or coconut oil, whatever your preference is. I'm using ghee today, mainly because I'm out of butter, but either one will work. And then I have 1/3 cup of monk fruit in a bowl. If you're not using monk fruit and you're using coconut sugar, you might want to increase that a tad. I do find the monk fruit to be very sweet. And I have 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of cinnamon. I am very fond of the strong cinnamon flavor in the cinnamon rolls. If you're not, you can cut back on that. And now we will add 2 tablespoons of melted ghee. Again, you could use butter, and we're just going to mix this all together. And this will be the filling for our cinnamon rolls. So there you have our butter and our sweetener and our cinnamon with a tiny bit of salt. If you're not using unsalted butter, though, you could certainly eliminate the salt. And we're just going to set that aside. We will take our mixing bowl and we will put in it 2 cups plus 2 tablespoons of almond flour. And to this, we will then add 1/4 cup of tapioca flour, 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of arrowroot flour, 6 tablespoons of coconut flour, 2 tablespoons of monk fruit, a rounded half teaspoon of cream of tartar. So you want about 5/8 of a teaspoon. So if you round a half teaspoon, you'll be close enough. And I have 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. If you're not going to use the cream of tartar and the baking soda together, you can switch out the cream of tartar and 1/4 teaspoon of the baking soda for 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder. You still need the other 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda though. Okay, and then we have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to whisk these ingredients together. Okay, this is all mixed together very nicely, and we're going to set it aside again. And then we're going to take 2 tablespoons of melted ghee, or if you wanted butter or coconut oil is certainly acceptable. And to this we are going to add 3/4 cup of coconut milk, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and make sure you're using real lemon juice and not that stuff that's got all kinds of chemicals in it. And I'm using today 2 egg yolks that I had left over from using just my whites for one of my recipes. But if you would like, you can certainly use a whole egg. And just add that in there. And then whisk these wet ingredients together. And once our wet ingredients are whisked together, we're going to pour them into the dry ingredients. And now we're just going to stir these up until we have a dough formed. Our dough seems to have come together nicely. This is what we've got. And we're just going to let this sit for 10 minutes before we work it. And so while this is sitting, you can work on preheating your oven. So we will need to turn the oven on to 375 degrees to preheat. Now that the dough has sat for 10 minutes, we're going to place it onto our work surface, and I am just using some parchment paper on my work surface. Alright, after you've get the dough on there, you want to press it into a 12 by 9 type size rectangle. Now that our dough is rolled into a rectangle, we're going to take and spread about a tablespoon of melted butter over the top. I have 3 tablespoons here. I'm also going to brush the tops before we put them in the oven. So I'm not really measuring this, so to speak, just kind of brushing it on, and it'll stretch as far as it stretches. So you can use melted butter, you could use melted ghee, you could use coconut oil if that's your preference. It's up to you. And after that is brushed on, we will take our sugar and cinnamon mixture and just sprinkle it around. After you get your cinnamon sugar mixture spread across your dough, we're going to take the dough and roll it up jelly roll style. And it's nice to have it on the parchment paper. It makes it much easier. If you're not using parchment paper, you may need to oil your surface. If you're not using parchment paper, you may need to put a little coconut flour or something down to keep the dough from sticking, but it won't stick to your parchment paper. The dough does tend to be a little crumblier than I would like sometimes, so that is can be a concern, and you do have to maybe kind of scrunch it together and mold it. But this is our log of dough. It rolled up pretty well today. And now we're just going to cut it in 1-inch increments and then put it in our prepared pan. And I'm just gonna make sure that butter is all across the bottom again, because it's kind of been sitting a little bit while we're working here. And you should be able to cut the log into 8 slices, about an inch thick each slice. Okay. And there you have it, nice cinnamon roll. And we're going to lay this in our pan with the cinnamon sugar side up showing. Just kind of put it in there and push it down a little bit. Okay, we're going to fill the pan, and I will brush them with the remaining butter or ghee that we have. Brush the tops, and then they'll go in the oven. So when I'm done brushing them, I will bring the camera around and let you see how it looks. Cinnamon rolls are ready to go in the oven. We have them brushed with the last 2 tablespoons of melted ghee, butter, coconut oil, whatever you're using. I'm going to put them in the preheated 375 degree oven for about 35 to 45 minutes. And then we'll take a look. We want to have them kind of golden brown. Okay. So shall we check the cinnamon rolls and see if they're ready? pretty good. They're a little golden around the edges and they're nice and firm. I think they look great. So now we can set them aside and make our icing for them. If you want icing, you may not. I will flip the camera around so you can see how they look before we ice them. So to ice the cinnamon buns, I am going to just use a small bowl. I don't need to dirty anything too extensive. And what I have here is some coconut butter that I have warmed, kind of like in a double boiler form, so that I could stir the coconut butter in the jar, because as it stands in the jar, the oil separates, just like if you have peanut butter or almond butter, any of those sorts of things, the oil separates from them. So this is just coconut butter, which is just from coconut. So I'm going to you can see how it's nice and liquidy. So I have a half a cup, and this is what I like to use for the icing, but maybe you want to make a different glaze, and that's your prerogative. You certainly can. And I think that the coconut butter tastes really great even just by itself, but my family likes a little more to it. So I've got a tablespoon of honey that I am also going to add. And a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're just going to mix that together. It shouldn't take long. It's a little less soupy now, but it's fine. And then you can just spread this over your warm cinnamon buns. So you saw how they looked with all of the icing on them. I'm going to take one out and let's see what they look like. You might want to just take a spatula. I'm using a plastic knife and just kind of run it around the edge of your pan to loosen anything that is stuck to the side, and then just pop one out. And this is what they look like on the bottom and the top. I'm pleased. I think I'll make a cup of tea and go sit down with a good book and eat my cinnamon roll. I hope you enjoyed our gluten-free video today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next gluten-free baked good. Have a great day.